We just want to show you how we've been moving forward with personalisation in Cumbria, and we've been very much looking at the impact a person's needs has on their quality of life and then in turn dignity. So just to start off, I just want to run through a few of the changes that's happened in terms of with the government. So the putting people first was back in 2007, and that was, the government wanted a shared vision for service users and carers to actually be at the heart of social care reform in terms of them having choice and control and personal budgets. And then the white paper, Vision for Adult Social Care in 2010, just further built on the principles of personalisation. And then Caring for Our Future, which was another white paper in July 2012, was really just taking the government's reforms that step further. And there was two underlying principles about personalisation. And one was that we treat people with dignity and respect, and we ensure that they are safe from abuse and neglect. And the other one was to truly achieve personalisation, we must really give people choice and control over the services and the support that they receive within sort of their own objectives. And it's about living a fulfilling life and being connected to society. Well then, taking that reform a step further, some of you will have heard that we have now out a draft care and support bill. And the draft care bill, the government's hoping will give us a single piece of modern legislation for adult social care, rather than the complex and really quite outdated legislation that we have at the moment. And it is very much about There's a lot in the care bill, but one of the key areas that local authorities must deliver on is an assessment of need. And it's very clearly saying that the impact of the adult's needs for care and support and well-being and the outcomes that the adult wishes to achieve in day-to-day life. And whether, and if so, to what extent the provision of care and support could contribute to the achievements of those outcomes, and whether, and if so, to what extent other matters could contribute to the achievement of those outcomes. And that's very much about what the person themselves can bring, what they have, but also what's in their community, with their neighbours, their friends, their family, so it's looking wider. Also, we need, as local authorities, to be able to measure how we're doing on this. And so there's a tool called ASCOT, which Louise is going to talk about, but it's actually an adult social care outcomes framework which measures transparency and quality of life and is seen as key to local authorities needing to use if they're going to deliver on the challenges within this draft bill. And as I say, I'm going to hand over in a minute to Louise, who's going to talk about how we've been using an adult social care outcomes tool in Cumbria to start to measure quality of life. Before I do that, it was actually a week ago today. I'm quite an outdoor person, and I was just outside, and all of a sudden I had this pain in my back, and my back seized. And I couldn't move, I couldn't walk, and I ended up being virtually bedbound for about 3-4 days. And it really hit home to me how it affected me, because it affected my quality of life, it affected my independence, it affected my dignity, it affected how I felt about choice, about how I felt for myself, and it made me think, what if this was like a longer term? How would that really feel for me? Because it changed my whole perspective on life. So what I would like you to do is, all of you in the room, is just for 1 minute, I would like you to close your eyes, and I would like you to think, if you had an illness or an accident that caused you not to be able to continue to do what you do in your everyday-to-day life, what would that feel like? What would be the impact? So if you could just close your eyes and just think for a minute about something, an injury or an illness, and what that might feel like for you. Okay, thank you. I want you to just park that thought, and we'll be coming back to it in the presentation. But just for now, I'm going to hand over to Louise to take us through ASCOT.
Thanks for that, Cheryl. I'm just going to give you a little bit of information about what ASCOT is and how it measures quality of life. We looked at various different tools, but we made the decision to use the ASCOT tool, which is the Adult Social Care Outcomes Toolkit. Just really because it was seemed to be such a robust and well-tested measure. It was developed by PSSRU. Apologies for the use of so many acronyms in here. That's the Personal Social Services Research Unit at the University of Kent. It measures social care-related quality of life across 8 domains using 9 different questions. Each of the questions has a 4-level answer response, and with some complex weightings and scorings behind the scene, you can actually calculate a quality of life score for people at a point in time, and then measure that every time before and after interventions, and then you can see the impact on their quality of life of the things that you're doing for them or helping them with. It's actually been proven to reflect a consistent quality of life across the general population as well. It's very relevant to social care needs, and it measures the impact of social care needs, but the domains were areas of life that are important to everybody, not just people with an impairment or a disability. These are the different domains, and there's a definition of what the domain is that the questions are trying to capture there. So it covers control over daily life, personal cleanliness, food and drink, personal safety, social participation and involvement, occupation, the cleanliness and comfort of your home, and dignity as well, which I think made it stand out from the other tools, because it was a lot more about how people feel about their life and the things that they can and can't do, and how that makes them feel about themselves as a person, as opposed to just being a functional assessment and looking at what people can't do anymore. So I thought, given that this is a dignity conference, it would be good to focus on, as I said earlier, there are 8 domains, the last one being dignity, but there are actually 9 questions. Now, the 2 questions which come last in the series of questions are designed to work together. And the first question asks about how having help makes you feel. And this is a filter question, if you like, to allow people to articulate any frustration, feelings of helplessness, vulnerability, anger, about the fact that they can no longer do something that they used to be able to do, that they've got a disability or an impairment. And the second question is actually the dignity question, which asks about how the way that they are helped, how the way they are treated by the people that help them makes them feel. And when they developed the question set, they found that it was really important to be able to allow people to get off their chests, if you like, the fact that they weren't happy that they had a disability or an impairment or that they were vulnerable. To then allow them to think clearly about whether they were actually treated with dignity. And it does give you a very strong, clear sense when you look at people's answers to the questions about how they actually feel about the help, the fact that they need help, and about the help that they're given and the way that they're helped and treated, which we just thought was really good, because that's something that if you're going through a functional assessment and asking people about, can you get to the bathroom, can you do this, can you eat unaided, you're kind of missing that, well, what does it mean for you? So that was why we felt that was such a useful tool.
So based on what Louise has just said, we thought, how can we actually build this tool into our assessment, support planning and review process? Because as Louise has said, assessment is very functional, and we don't often ask about how that impact of something happening to somebody really feels for them. So what we did is we built it in at the assessment stage, so practitioners could go through it with our customers either at the beginning of the assessment, as they go through the assessment, at the end of the assessment, whichever suited the person best. And then actually building that across into drawing up a support plan. So what we wanted was then for people to think, when they've done the quality of life questionnaire, to think, okay, you've maybe said that you don't feel as clean as you want to, you don't get enough independence with your meals. So in your own words, what does that mean? What does it feel like now? And what are the desired outcomes? What's going to improve your quality of life? So we built it into the support plan. And then at the review, so when we're back out reviewing, we would actually revisit that quality of life questionnaire and say, right, at the assessment, this is how you're feeling. You know, has things changed, so we can see if we can actually get a true measure. But again, we want to get a measure in the person's own words. So what we ask is, and what I'm going to ask you again to do, is just to give yourself another minute, close your eyes, and think back to whether it was an illness, an injury, whatever it was that you thought about. And actually now think about, you know, what actually then, is it actually important to you? What's the impact of that illness or that injury? But what also is good in your life that you don't want to change, but actually now what you do need to change? And think about what it is that you need to change to get back that quality of life that your injury or your illness might have had on you. Because this is what we ask the people that we, you know, our customers, our service users. So if you could just take a minute and kind of think about that and the impact that either that injury or illness has had on you and what you'd need to do to change that or make it something better for you in the future. Okay, so you may have had time to reflect or not. What we do is then we ask at this point in time on a continuum of 1 to 5, and 1 being the worst and 5 being the best, where are you at this moment in time? And where is it you'd like to be? So the example we've given here is a bit small to see, so I'll read it out. But this was actually a lady that said in her desired outcomes, so after she'd gone through the quality of life questions, what she said was important to her was that she feels still in charge of her own life, her family still need her, and that she's not causing them burden or stress, and that her personal care needs were addressed to the standard she'd like with privacy and dignity. And what had happened with this lady is she'd been admitted to hospital, and she'd had a role in the family. She'd been a mother and a gran, and she liked to sit in her kitchen with a pot of tea and her biscuits, and the family would come and visit her, and they'd pour their hearts out to her about their problems, and she had a real role. Now, what she was worried about, because she'd been quite ill with diabetes and arthritis, and she was now needing help, and she couldn't get downstairs by herself. And she said what was important to her was to have a longer time in the morning with her carers to come in, help her get washed and dressed downstairs, so that when her family came to see her, she would still be washed, dressed, presentable in the kitchen, back in her role as mother or gran, so that they didn't feel they were burdening her with their problems and she wouldn't be able to cope with it. So it actually, for her, gave her back that dignity of role. So that's really what we're trying to do. So at that point where she was, on a continuum of 1 to 5, she was only at a 2 in terms of feeling she had that role. And she was only at a 3 with her personal care because she wasn't quite sure about the carers and whether they'd gossip about her. She didn't really understand about the carers. But by the time she got to the review, she'd actually put her score up to a 4 herself because she did feel that she had her role and her family was still coming to her. And she'd got to know the carers and understood how professional they were and actually got to really like them, so that had been important to her. Now, what I'd like to do is just a couple of the comments. So just some of the key themes and benefits that we've had as feedback, which has been from our service users, but also from our practitioners, is the questions can be a powerful tool to get people thinking about how they feel about different areas of their lives at a given point of time. It allows practitioners to see which areas of quality of life are most important to the customer, i.e. where the customer feels their needs are, and it assists with the development of truly personalised support plans. I would like you to talk through a case each where you've actually used the quality of life questionnaire, and perhaps talk through how it's made a difference to your customer's life, and how it's helped inform their support plan, so that they can actually achieve their desired outcomes that's made a difference to them, and they felt perhaps they've got some dignity back in their life. Would you be willing to start, Linda?
Yeah, that's fine. I work with a lady in her early 60s. She's been known to the department for a long time. She's end-stage MS, and for a long time they've used direct payments, but it was all about her care and not a lot about her as a person. So I decided to do a full reassessment of her, and I actually used the quality of life tool to do that. And when we were going through it, it was a bit tedious at first because I'd never used it before, and it felt a bit awkward. But actually, when we got to the end of it, it was really worth it. And one of the things that we got out of it was that when it come to socialising, that she didn't want to go out, she didn't feel confident, and that she didn't know what to do anymore. But all her life, I'd said to her, well, what did you used to do? And she said to me that all her life she loved to play music. She played in orchestras and she played the violin and different instruments, and she couldn't do that anymore because of her MS. So what she decided, the only thing she had left was her voice, and that she'd love to join a choir, but she didn't know how to start, she didn't have the confidence to go out. So we both agreed together that I would look at options of a choir that she could possibly go to and getting her there, and she also would look at options, and what we could do is use part of the direct payment to have somebody take her there and to pay for the petrol, for the taxi, or whoever takes her, out of a direct payment. And so I left it a couple of weeks, and I phoned her back, and I actually went back out to see her, and she said to me that I told her where I had got to, and she says, well, actually I've been in touch with somebody, it's a choir locally to her, and she says, I've got somebody to take me, and I've been for the first time this week, which I didn't know about. And she says to me, it was absolutely fantastic. She says, I went in my wheelchair and nobody looked at me in a wheelchair, they just looked at me as a person, they welcomed me. I joined, started singing with them, had a great night, can't wait to go back. And she says, for the first time people see me as me and not in a wheelchair. And to me that was worth everything. It cost very, very little for her to go there. We are taking our subs out of a direct payment, but she's just loving it.
So it had a real impact on her dignity and how she felt about herself, and how people saw her.
Yeah, for the first time, yeah.
Great,
Andy's getting her out.
Brilliant, thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
Susan, would you also be willing to share a case where you've found similar with quality of life?
I had a lady who had leukemia, and she'd been going through chemotherapy, and we used the quality of life questions to sort of try and plan for her future, and to get, you know, her services and whatever that she wanted, that would enhance her quality of life. Unfortunately, she didn't. Because she was going through chemotherapy, her resistance and her immune system was very low. So she didn't. She couldn't have carers going in and out because of infection and what have you. So during the questions for the quality of life, you know, I asked her if there was anything that she wanted to talk about, and obviously she didn't know what her prognosis was at that time. And she said that she, well, first of all, she said she would talk to the Macmillan nurse, and I referred her to the Macmillan. However, she declined. She couldn't talk about it. When I visited her to follow up from the quality of life, and we were talking, and I said, you know, is there anything, I know you don't want to talk about it, you know, but is there anything that would make your life better, make you feel better? And she said, well, there was only one thing. She couldn't talk to her family. She had a son and a daughter and a grandson, and she could not, as hard as she tried, could not talk about her end-of-life plans. She didn't want to upset them, and it was too upsetting for her, and she didn't actually want to believe it. But she felt that she had to have something or tell somebody what she wanted. And two of the things that she wanted that, you know, that would make her feel better was that she didn't want to end her life at home where her family had to care for her. She didn't want to put that burden on them. And secondly, she said that she'd never discussed this with anybody else, but when she was at end of life, she wanted to be buried in a wicker coffin. Following that, I worked with her for a few weeks, and then she went to stay with her daughter, and she took ill, and that was in Nottingham. So she was down there for a couple of months. When I got a phone call from a daughter who was really obviously upset, and she asked me, did I have any information, you know, because her mum had never talked about the end of life, and they didn't actually think that it would have happened that quickly.
Oh, she died?
Yeah, she died. Fortunately, I had this lady's agreement to document her wishes at end of life, from that we talked about in the quality of life, and I was able to pass on to this to her daughter that her mum's wish that she could have a wicker coffin. Her daughter said she'd never heard of that before, and I have to say we didn't go into it too deeply because it was a really, you know, it was a delicate time for them as well. But I did go to the lady's funeral, and I have to say, you know, for me and probably for this lady, when I seen the coffin go by and it was a wicker coffin, I felt like she'd got what she wanted. You know, even though it wasn't a life outcome, it was the outcome that she wanted.
So it kind of gave dignity.
So it gave her the dignity and what she wanted. You know, plus it felt good that she, you know, and she probably felt better that it was documented somewhere. Yes. That, you know, that she couldn't talk to her family about it. But that was maybe just taken something off her mind, that it was there, and, you know, and that I had said I would pass that information on.
And her daughter wouldn't have known if you
had. Her daughter,
so
nobody would have
had a wish.
Yeah.
It's very powerful.
Yeah.
Thank you, both of you.
You're welcome.
So we are delighted to have Mr. Long with us today. Mr. Long has had a very interesting life so far. He's a retired teacher who taught French and English for 27 years and then became ordained and was a reverend for over 30 years. And he's very kindly agreed to come today to explain to us how he's been using his direct payment to improve his quality of life and what dignity means to him. And Scott, who's one of his carers from his care team, is just going to kind of support Mr. Long in telling us his story. So, Mr. Long, we'd just like to start off with your experience. You've been in hospital, your last hospital admission. Is that okay?
Absolutely fine, yes. Marvellous. Very, very good way to start, actually. You must forgive if I pause sometimes. I'm pretty ancient, but perfectly sane, in spite of what my friends tell me. Is that okay? Sorry. Right. I'll begin with an actual happening, because I'd like to pay tribute to the two remarkable hospitals in my area. One at no, it's the other one. The one at Kendal. Sorry, the one at Kendal, which is the head office, and the larger sort of junior one at Lancaster. Absolutely superb, and all my experience with them has been wonderful. in every possible way. But what I'm going to say, which is not so complimentary, is about the relation between the different parts of those hospitals, the relation between an excellent part where they've decided that they want to do a certain amount of treatment, but then the communication of that decision doesn't reach the next part at all. And therefore, there is a very important gap in communication there. But anyhow, let me tell you what happened. I had a fall a few weeks ago. I fell on a loose stone on a road and went a cropper. So duly, an ambulance turned up. I was put in that, and that was fine. The driver and the assistant there were absolutely superb. They joked, they communicated with me, they asked me all the time what was I feeling. Excellent. And then we got to the other end, and we got to these very good, and I mean it, very good, one of the two hospitals, and everything changed. I was wheeled out and put onto a trolley, and then after that I became an item. I became a thing. I became a parcel. The two men who were trundling me about didn't speak to me at all. They spoke to each other above my head about a football match that they'd been interested in that afternoon. And I was lost. I was also at that time, because of the time, I was rather in need of going to the loo. There's no danger now, it's all right, this is a story, it's not the past. I couldn't sort of interrupt this. They were much more interested in their job. They'd got a body there, and they got a piece of paper, floor so-and-so, and then they arrived, and then they discovered they'd got the wrong floor, so they took me down to the right one, and then they dumped me there, and they disappeared. So there I was in two excellent hospitals, one of two excellent hospitals, and a prisoner. I was unable to have any communication with anybody about my needs. I didn't know what was going to happen next, how long I would wait, whether I would ever wait, really. And my feelings were getting worse and worse. Nothing happened. So the first thing I would say to anybody who is training as a trainer is, please talk to me. Please talk to me. Make me feel that I am human, that you are in touch with me. Ask me how well I'm feeling. Am I all right? Reassuring me that you'd soon be handing me over to somebody else. And making me feel that I wasn't lost. Please talk to me, and please ask me. Please, what is the word I'm looking for there? Please listen to me. Listen to what I say. Just don't go on talking about the football match. Listen to what, speak to me, reassure me, and listen to me. And then we can perhaps make a choice as to what's going to happen next. I know what it is, it's going to happen soon, and I know what to expect. And then, suddenly, there was a change. I'd been moved again. I'd been moved into the assessment centre of the hospital. And I remembered once I'd been in one of those assessment centres a few months before. I'd forgotten about it until now, but it was absolutely wonderful. What happens is when you get into the assessment centre is that you are informed that here is a nurse who will look after you. And the first thing I said was, please can I go to the toilet? And they dealt with that straight away. I came back again. Here is the nurse named so-and-so. She is your special nurse. You can call on her at any time. If you need to stay here more than a few hours, she will see to the meal for you. If you need to stay overnight, she will look after that. You've nothing to worry about at all.
Mr. Long, perhaps you'd just like to talk to us when Hazel came to see you to help you get back home.
Ah, yes. Hazel is absolutely lovely. She's a marvellous person. She is the representative with the Cumbria County Council, who generously supports the work of the health centre, and she's an altogether lovely person. She gives you time. She gives you time to think, because old age means that it takes time for the impact of what somebody has said to reach you, that's all. That's just a fact of life. She gives you that time, she waits, she listens, she explains, and she does an absolutely wonderful job. It's a great relief when I meet her every time. My first thought is, now I'll be able to explain what it was at length. The question of what it felt like when I wanted to return home. I'd always entered the whole system of the National Health on the understanding that I was free to return whenever I wanted. I was not going to be a prisoner forever. I must be free, and they accepted that. That was the condition. And so I could then discuss with Hazel what would be a suitable time, and I could express to her my gratitude for the contribution that the County Council of Cumbria, in this case, makes to my financially to my welfare. Now, what did it feel like when I finally got home, and the hospital cannot, will not let you go out of hospital until they are sure that there is a corresponding readiness and need all available. And Julie, who has been my helper ever since my wife died, for 22 years anyhow, at least, she organized for me people whom she knew to be absolutely experienced, absolutely reliable, absolutely in every way fitted to take over from the hospital. And although I didn't know the name of one of them at least, I felt totally confident. It was a matter of complete trust there, based on years and years of experience. And that trust must exist before you can move, and before the hospital is able to let you go. And the hospital also has to have your decision before you leave hospital as to whether, when you come to die, whether you wish to be resuscitated artificially. And that is because the carers, the people in charge, are legally obliged to attempt to resuscitate somebody unless they have had a paper signed both by my doctor and myself saying, I don't want to. When I die, that's fine. Okay?
Would you talk to the audience about your care team, what they mean to you?
My carers, give me the different things. Choice. They give me choice. They explain. I know that when I get back, Scott, who is one of my carers, will be there, or else the other carer, Julie, will be there to explain everything that needs to be explained, to look after me properly. And I have complete confidence, and that wonderful feeling of complete safety is control. And I am in control. They never say, "No, you've got to do this." They give me 2 alternatives at least, and say, "What would you like?" And I choose. My freedom is safeguarded completely. And that is absolutely essential. Otherwise, I'm a prisoner. You're told what to eat, what to do when I walk out, and so on. As a result, I have been encouraged by my carers not only to walk about with the help of a Zimmer in my home, but when the weather is fine and warm, I walk out, and I can walk out accompanied by a carer. With my Zimmer only, I can walk for 3/4 of an hour. Freely, absolutely freely. They encourage me to grow in independence within the limits of my age, and within the limits of my physical state. I can go, they will come with me as far as a friend's house. I can go and sit in his garden with him. They will come back whenever I like. I can go and have lunch with a friend in her house, and then brought back later on. My freedom is wonderful. I'm living as far as anybody of my age can expect to live, with complete freedom and control, and that is marvelous. I'm on 24-hour care, and at any time in the 24 hours, I know that there is somebody within call, either next door or not in the same room, maintaining his or her privacy and my privacy. And that is absolutely essential. That is a wonderful relief to get back. And it's perfectly possible. That's enough.
No, never enough, I'm sure. I could listen to you all day. Would you, just to finish off, be willing to tell the audience how young you'll be next birthday?
Well, I got the best card I had for my birthday, which was a few days ago. It had a tiny thing with a cake, a birthday cake, and then in large letters, "Keep calm, you're only 99." Which was marvellous, absolutely marvellous. So